The Stone Zone with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Troy Smith. I will be hosting the Stone Zone here today in Roger's absence. We do have a long Roger clip that we want to play, but I want to start off the show real quickly by breaking some news here because it's just breaking now. President Trump has reportedly selected Florida Representative Matt Gaetz to serve as Attorney General in his next administration. The former president has also reportedly named former House Democrat Tulsi Gabbard to be his Director of National Intelligence. This is a huge step in bringing together this coalition that Roger and I have talked about for the better part of a year here on the Stone Zone. The political realignment that America has been waiting for some time. And this political realignment, folks, has happened because for so long between the Mitt Romney party of the Republicans and the Obama party of the Democrats, the working class people of this country have been left behind. And President Trump really was the first politician in many years, really since Ronald Reagan, to represent that working man and to rebuild that coalition of working class Democrats and working class Republicans who want to put aside their differences in order for the country to succeed. Just massive news as we also have news that there's several other people that have been nominated to this administration. Mike Huckabee yesterday was announced as the U.S. ambassador to Israel, along with several other individuals that we're going to be discussing later in the show here today. But we don't want to do too much here because we will have Mark Vargas with us on the back half to discuss these latest developments. So folks, as I said, my name is Troy Smith here hosting the show. Let's roll this clip of Roger as he discusses really groundbreaking stuff that's going on inside of Trump's administration. This is a great interview by Roger where he talks about the goings on. So let's roll that. And when we come back, we'll have Mark Vargas for the news. Thank you.
From the Stone Zone to go over the biggest news stories. Roger, thank you for joining me again.
Delighted to be with you. As you know, I was scheduled to be with you election night. Then I just got swept up by Donald Trump himself, who asked me to please dig into whether there were still enough outstanding votes in Pennsylvania to theoretically steal the state from him. Had to make quite a few calls to the Keystone State. The answer was no. And of course, we now know the result.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I was fine with it. I knew that you were busy. I was just hoping to get some of that Mar-a-Lago energy that you were around. You, more than anyone, has been a part of getting Donald Trump ready for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You helped him through the first time. Now, what did it feel like for you to see your hand-picked candidate win and become the 47th president of the United States?
Well, I was very happy, first of all, for him, because his victory is a testimony to his personal resilience, his personal strength, his personal stamina, his personal perseverance. It was really a landmark. The man is a lion. There's just no question about it. This isn't just winning an election. This is winning an election with the full illegitimate authority of the United States government trying to bankrupt you, trying to throw you in jail, trying to keep you off the ballot. It's Herculean in its scope. I mean, look, prior to this, I make an argument that, well, it was Richard Nixon who had the greatest political comeback in American history. He was dead and buried. Losing a razor-thin election in 1960, then losing a race for governor of California in 1962. But in a strange way, the murder of JFK, the murder of Dr. King, the murder of Robert Kennedy, and the disastrous Vietnam War parted the seas in a way that allowed for, truly up until that time, the greatest comeback in American political history. Donald Trump has now beaten that record in spades. I like to think on election night that, well, someplace Richard Nixon was looking down from heaven and smiling. So it was a personal victory for the president, and for that, I am very happy. But it's also a great victory for the country, because I think America is now going to enter into a golden age of peace and prosperity, of equal opportunity, of affordable housing, of low prices, of secure neighborhoods, where we can do away with the scourge of drugs. And really, America is on the cusp of its greatest time since 1776. Donald Trump is the right man at the right time for this incredible job. And what's really amazing, Stephen, is that the American people saw through the tsunami of lies by the mainstream media, the tsunami of invective, the tsunami of smear that was used against him. They saw through the lawfare tactics in which they tried to bankrupt him, throw him in jail, keep him off the ballot. So it is through all of that. Now, I don't think the future could be any brighter than it is today for this country.
I agree. I think my viewers would agree with that as well. One thing I am nervous about, speaking of Richard Nixon and the government railroading you lived through the Russia hoax. Are we going to see another Russia hoax 2.0, something totally different? Are they already lining impeachments up against this man?
You have to assume yes. I mean, when I watched Joe Biden after the election, I don't know, he seemed pretty happy to me. I think he realized who screwed him and who forced him out of this race. And, we both know right now in his heart, he believes he would have run a better race than Kamala. He might even believe that he would have won, although I don't think he would have. But then I saw Kamala committing herself to the peaceful transfer of power. That's exactly what Barack Obama said. At the same time, he was planning the biggest single dirty trick in American history, which was nothing less than the full use of the authority of the United States government and the enormous capabilities of our intelligence agencies to use what they knew was totally fraudulent evidence, the Steele dossier, and also the false claim that the Democrat National Committee had been the subject of an online hack by the Russians, for which there is no evidence whatsoever, to justify, in their minds, the removal of a duly elected president in a coup d'etat. So people who will do that, people who I believe are behind, at some level, the two unquestionable assassination attempts against Donald Trump, they are not just going to walk away peacefully and cede control of the nation to the people, to the man who the people have chosen. They don't care about the will of the American people. So yeah, you have to wonder what's next. Is it Iranian interference in our election? Is it Russian interference? I'd like to see if they're going to come up with something. I'd like to see the proof, because they didn't have proof last time, yet they kept it going for 2.5 years. They ruined some people's lives. They tried to ruin other people's lives. They certainly tried to ruin Donald Trump's life. But yes, I think that we can count on some kind of countermeasure by the deep state to try to undo the will of the people yet again.
Yeah. How mad do you think Barack Obama and Joe Biden are at Kamala Harris? Do you think they knew she couldn't win? Do you think they're mad at her for being too timid and intimidated by podcasters and interview? What do you think is going on in their minds?
Well, first of all, I think Joe is much madder at Barack Obama than he is at Kamala Harris. He realizes Kamala Harris was just a pawn, and then it was Barack Obama who removed him against his will. It was Barack Obama who, I believe, used the threat of removal under the 25th Amendment to get Joe to withdraw his candidacy. I think he was drugged. I think he was bludgeoned. I think he was forced into that. So I think he's madder at Barack Obama than anyone else. having known Kamala Harris for all those years, you have to wonder why Obama, or for that matter, Biden, who endorsed her, ever thought that she was capable of running a viable race for president. The woman is a cipher. There is no there there. She is her record in California was horrific. Her record as a prosecutor was horrific. And then Joe smothered her in his embrace. I mean, remember, he said, "Oh no, there was no decision that we made that she wasn't in on." So, folks, in essence, saying, if you like the inflation, if you like the gas prices, if you like the fact that we're teetering on the edge of World War III, well, she was in on all of it. So he smothered her in his embrace. And then, of course, she walked into it as well when she was asked, "Is there anything you can think of that you might have done differently than Joe Biden?" She said, "No, I couldn't think of a single thing. But, oh, by the way, Trump is Hitler and his followers are Nazis." That's not much of an uplifting, inspiring message for the closing days of an election.
Yeah, I think they went too far. They probably lost a lot of their own voters going, okay, we don't like this guy, but Hitler, come on, that's a bridge too far. What are your thoughts on, and I had last night I did a emergency broadcast. I had over 1,000 people in my community calling Mitch McConnell, emailing him. What are your thoughts on him now trying to hold the secret vote tomorrow to try to undermine Donald Trump's presidency by inserting either John Thune or Cornyn from Texas, which will go against MAGA desires, conservative desires? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, what do you expect from a pig but a grunt? I mean, look, he's been undermining Donald Trump from the beginning. I find them both odious. John Cornyn, who lauded the appointment of Lisa Monaco, who had been Robert Mueller's chief of staff at the FBI and who probably de facto running the Justice Department today. She was involved deeply in the Russian collusion hoax, but no Senate Republican brought that up in her confirmation hearings, which is almost unbelievable. Only Ted Cruz and Rand Paul voted against her confirmation. Cornyn actually rose to praise her at that time. I find Thune equally odious. This is a man who, when NBC sprung the famous grab them by the you-know-what on Trump, insisted that the Republican National Committee dump Trump as our candidate and replace him with Mike Pence. And had we done so, we would have lost. So neither one of them can be counted on to carry forward the America First agenda of Donald Trump. So I am strongly supporting my own senator, Rick Scott. I've disagreed with Rick Scott here and there on an issue or two, but I must tell you, he was a great governor of Florida, much better than the one we have now. And he's been a great U.S. senator for Florida. And like Donald Trump, because he came from the business world, not politics, you can't buy him, you can't corrupt him, you can't bully him. He's very much his own man. And he had the courage to endorse Donald Trump over his own home state governor. So I'm strongly for Rick Scott. These cowards are having a secret ballot because, well, Stephen, here's the difference between a caucus and a cactus. See, with a cactus, all the pricks are on the outside.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. Okay. Is there any particular appointment or partnership between Trump and someone else that you are excited about? For example, many of my libertarian friends are like out of their minds excited about Trump and RFK Jr. teaming up to take on the FDA, big pharma, big food. Any particular partnership that just makes the future brighter in your mind?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of RFK and his agenda myself. I think that because of RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and Governor Rod Blagojevich and other common sense Democrats who actually believe in capitalism and a strong national defense and a healthier America and don't want to rush into every foreign war where our inherent national interests are just not apparent. I think we're on the cusp of a giant realignment in this country. We talked about it on your show. It's Republican Democrat is not the divide here. The divide are the insiders, the global elites who no one elected, but who want to run the country, and outsiders, people of common sense and good faith. So I'm very excited about the partnership with Robert F. Kennedy. I think he's a man of enormous integrity, enormous intelligence. What impresses me about him, and I realize that some people find his views controversial, but whenever he's pressed on any question regarding public health, he can back up everything he says with studies and documentation. He's not shooting from the hip. That's impressive. Tulsi Gabbard, to me, is the standout of this campaign. I love J.D. Vance, don't get me wrong, but she's had an odyssey. She was a Democrat. She left that party when she realized that it no longer resembled the party she joined 20 years ago. It was the party of war and censorship and death. And now she's become a Republican, which I think is very exciting. I'm hopeful that President Trump will give her an important position in his administration. She's an enormously able woman, not only 4 terms in Congress and on the Armed Services Committee, but a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, a combat veteran in Iraq and Kuwait, one of the greatest political communicators I've seen since Ronald Reagan. I mean, I've watched her, and it's just, you can see the electricity in the room. You can feel it. So I'm very excited about that collaboration as well. Tom Homan, to me, a standout appointment, somebody who is going to be in charge of the deportation. Let's start with those who are just here illegally, but who have criminal records. Let's just begin with those. But Homan is the man for that job. He's a tough son of a gun, straight talker with a record of success when he was the head of ICE. Very excited about that appointment as well.
Okay. Let's go a little deeper on Tom Homan. He, obviously has people like AOC scared out of their mind. Oh my gosh, we might have illegal immigrants removed from the country. What are we to do? He's used a lot of really bold language, but I think that bold lion-like energy is attractive to the conservative base. He also said something yesterday that really stood out to me. He said, those 300,000 missing children under Biden, we're going to find them and get them back to their family. Biden, Harris, they've done nothing to find these children that are obviously being trafficked. I have children. It's gross. It makes me sick to think about. Do you think he has to, at this point, take a bold stance on the border and getting these illegals out?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think it's just the base that appeals to. I'm not sure what AOC's problem is. In other words, oh my God, this guy's going to enforce the law. He's going to enforce the law. How terrible. I think that this is the great thing that the Democrats don't understand. It doesn't matter whether you are Black or Hispanic or Asian or young or old. All Americans want the same thing. They want economic opportunity and security. They want affordable housing. They want low grocery prices. They want low fuel prices. They want good schools where they teach history and America's heritage, as well as the basics of mathematics and science. They want, above all, secure neighborhoods so they can walk to the car without fearing being hit in the head and robbed. They want to be free of the scourge of illegal drugs. So I think Tom Homan speaks to a much larger constituency than just those in the base.
Okay. Yeah, I don't understand AOC. Maybe she's afraid she'll lose future voters. But she's Puerto Rican, and having lived in Puerto Rico, I can tell you with certainty, they don't like when Haitians and Dominicans illegally come in and start taking their jobs. I don't know why she would see it any differently, but maybe it's because she's a New York Puerto Rican. Do you think Homan, as they say, is going to have to break some eggs in the kitchen in order to make a souffle? Is he going to have to come out harsh? There's going to be ugly scenes. I mean, he talked about this mass deportation. They're going to have to go into corporations, meet with employers. round people up? It's going to have to be a little bit ugly, right?
Well, look, I think he's got to enforce the law. It's just like it was not pretty the way that these people were trafficked into the country by the cartels, just like it's not pretty that they have peddled drugs that have caused millions of deaths in this country. No, this is not going to be pretty. But Dwight Eisenhower, who's really one of our greatest presidents, very underrated because he wasn't flashy, but really one of our best presidents. We had unprecedented peace and prosperity under Ike. He deported 1.3 million illegals from the country who were here illegally. Tom Homan is the exact right guy for this job. And the left is going to go crazy because, yes, I think their long-term plan was always the same, which is to bring all of these illegals in and then eventually give them citizenship so they could change the makeup of the voting population of the United States. And that is now going to fail. Thanks to the courage of Donald Trump and the capabilities of Tom Homan.
Help me and my audience understand why Trump came out publicly against Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. Is it just that they are seen as being a part of the problem in DC? What are your thoughts on him blocking them?
Well, if you go to StoneZONE.com, I've written an extensive story on why the president cannot trust Mike Pompeo. I have reason to believe the president read that piece before he made his decisions. I also addressed the question of Nikki Haley. Mike Pompeo, first of all, defended the inquisition by Jack Smith over Donald Trump's perfectly legal retention of classified documents, which I believe under the Presidential Records Act he was entitled to do. He defended the raid on Mar-a-Lago. He defended the legitimacy of that investigation. Mike Pompeo also is the man who convinced President Trump not to declassify all the documents pertaining to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Mike Pompeo is a guy, I think was speaking at Yale, who bragged about the fact that as CIA director, he lied and he cheated and he stole. He says, that's what we've been taught to do. That's what we teach in the CIA. And then, of course, lastly, he planned to assassinate Julian Assange, a journalist inside the embassy. There was a CIA plan that he pushed to assassinate Assange. Assange is a journalist. This idea that he was a Russian spy has never been proven because it's not true. You know, the left used to love Julian Assange when he was exposing the excesses of the war machine under George W. Bush. They only grew to hate him when he started to expose the excesses of the war machine under Hillary and Bill Clinton. And no one to this day has ever challenged the authenticity or the accuracy of anything that was released by Julian Assange. Now, those who say, well, but he took classified documents and he published them. What do they do with the New York Times or the Washington Post? Have you never heard of the Pentagon Papers case? That's where the Supreme Court ruled that journalistic organizations who get information that's classified have a right to publish it. So much for that. Mike Pompeo is bad news. Nikki Haley is bad news. Both of them committed to the chain of endless foreign war. Both of them, I think, committed to continuing the war in Ukraine, which Donald Trump wants to bring to a close so we can stop the killing. So I like to think that the piece that I wrote, you can find it in my Substack as well. Also find it at StoneZONE.com. I sent it to the president. I hope he read it. I hope that it played some role in what I think was a very good decision to bar both of them from a future administration. You know, it was Benjamin Disraeli in forming his second government saying, I want no spent volcanoes. Is a line that Richard Nixon picked up. It's time for an all-new team of people who understand they were not elected president. Donald Trump was elected president. Their job is to carry out the agenda, not their personal agenda, but the agenda of Donald J. Trump. And I think so far he's picked extraordinarily able people who some of whom have been past political opponents, but who now understand that their job is to carry out the Trump agenda, once again, not their agenda.
Okay. The one that I'm seeing mixed reviews on in my community comments is Marco Rubio. I have liked Marco Rubio. He challenged Trump when he ran for president, but I mean, other than that, is there something that I might be missing, or what are your thoughts on Marco Rubio? I don't know why my community kept saying, "What about Marco Rubio? What about Marco Rubio?"
Well, first of all, Marco Rubio's my senator, and in his caseworkers, when my wife had cancer, he was very, very, very helpful to my family. So I'll never say anything bad about him. We have a few political disagreements, but when it comes to communism in this hemisphere, nobody has been more hardline when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Cuba. He's been an excellent U.S. senator. He endorsed Donald Trump over his own home state governor, Ron DeSantis. That was an act of courage. He has an excellent personal relationship with the president. For somebody who ran against him, I think he was a major supporter of Trump's presidency. They worked very closely together on foreign policy issues in this hemisphere, particularly. And again, I think Senator Rubio, while he was not my first choice, I'm very happy with his appointment. I think he understands that his job is to carry out the Trump agenda. He's very able, and he's going to do that. Look, I think that this Donald Trump is a very different man than the one who became president in 2016. I think he has a very keen understanding of the Washington power structure and how it really works. And I think he is carefully choosing people who he knows can be trusted to carry out his agenda, not their agenda. Senator Rubio clearly understands that his job is to implement Donald Trump's anti-war foreign policy, and I think that's what he will do.
Okay. Just seeing if I was missing something. I believe Senator Rubio was the one that correctly pointed out that there were biolabs in Ukraine, and that might be part of the reason for the war there. What are your thoughts on Trump just immediately moving on getting this Russia-Ukraine war shut down? He's appealing to Zelensky, no more U.S. money, no U.S. blood. If you are going to go at this, you're going to go at it with Europe, but you have a beautiful culture, a beautiful city. Let's rebuild that. To Putin, he's saying, we don't need any more dead Russians. Let's get this thing wrapped up. What are your thoughts on his handling of this so far?
Well, first, let's recognize that under Joe Biden and Antony Blinken, we didn't even have any negotiations going on. We're having no dialogue at all to try to settle this matter, which makes it very clear that the State Department under Joe Biden had no interest in ending the war, no interest in stopping the killing. Donald Trump's a deal maker. He has the trust and respect of everybody on both sides of the war. They know he means business. He didn't tell one side to stand down and not the other side. He basically told both sides to stand down and let's resolve this. History. There is no greater accolade, no greater title that history can bestow on someone other than peacemaker. And that's, I think you're going to find, describes Donald Trump's second presidency almost perfectly.
Do you think he will have a focus on not only reinstating the Abraham Accords, but strengthening and expanding those?
Look, I'm not a foreign policy expert, but here's what I do know. He's going to end the practice of the Biden administration, who, as you know, repealed the harsh sanctions that he put on Iran that drove Iran almost to the brink of bankruptcy. These sanctions were so harsh that even their Chinese patrons would not buy oil from Iran. They didn't have the money to subsidize Hamas or Hezbollah. They didn't have the money to renew their nuclear weapons development program. They were broke. Therefore, they weren't a danger to Israel. They weren't a danger to the rest of the world. Joe Biden, following the policy prescriptions of his puppet master, Barack Obama, gave them more than $190 billion. What did they think the Iranians were going to do with that money? So this idea that building Iran up would create greater stability and balance in the region, that's what's called insanity. And that's why we had the attack on Israel on October 7th. And it's why we have this horrific conflict. So I would expect, I don't speak for the president in any way, just a supporter and a 45-year friend, but I think he's going to reassert the sanctions against Iran so that they don't have the resources to wreak havoc in the world or the region.
Okay. All right. Final question, Roger. I appreciate you coming on. You're in independent media. I'm in independent media. But I read today on Daily Mail, CNN is hemorrhaging money. They are preparing to lay off hundreds of employees before Christmas. Their top talent, they are either not renewing their contract or they're asking them to come back for smaller salaries. Does this all just come down to you reap what you sow, and you lie to the American people, you lose their trust?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, Stephen. I don't get my news from CNN for the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. I mean, this is not news. This is not journalism. This is just straight propaganda. And yeah, I'm very mindful of the fact that on that cold morning when I was arrested at 6 o'clock in the morning after 29 heavily armed FBI agents wearing full SWAT gear and brandishing fully automatic M4 assault weapons surrounded and then stormed my home, that CNN had a camera, how coincidentally, just 25 feet from my front door. Now, the street had been roped off. I lived on a dead-end street. The rest of the media was, 2 blocks away, roped off. But CNN was given special permission, pardon me, to be outside my door. And I have an affidavit signed by a Fort Lauderdale police officer who said when he told them, wait a minute, you're with the media, you have to move down the street behind that barrier. He got chewed out by an FBI agent who said, no, they have special permission to be here. So the idea that, pardon me, that CNN won an award from the White House Correspondents Association for their tough investigative reporting that led them to believe that I might be arrested that morning, that's nonsense. I was arrested at 6:06. At 6:11, someone at CNN texts my lawyer a copy of my sealed indictment, an indictment that would not be unsealed until 10:30 that morning. It has no court stamps or time stamps on it. But when you look at the metadata tags, there's the man who wrote it, the prosecutor, Andrew Weissman, who leaked it to CNN. That's a crime, by the way, but the judge was not at all interested in that in my case. So CNN is not, that's not journalism, that's propaganda. The only people that are still watching are in airports, I think. So, it's karma. It's karma as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm glad they're getting their due. Roger, you are a national treasure in my mind. Thank you so much for everything you do. I know that you have sacrificed a lot to get the American people to this point. If people want to continue to follow you, hear your ideas on improving the country, making America great again, where can they do that?
The best place to go to is StoneZONE.com, StoneZONE.com. Also, I'm at Substack. I think it's substack.rogerstone.com. You can go there. I still, unfortunately, have a handful of these lawfare civil cases against my wife and I that are filed by maniacs, lunatics, crazy people, Democrats, liberals. Oh, wait, I'm being redundant. So you can go to StoneDefenseFund.com. I once had 17 of these harassment lawsuits against us. We have settled all of them to our favor so far. We're down to, I think, 2 or 3. If you want to help me there, StoneDefenseFund.com, and God bless you for it. God bless you, Stephen, for having me on. I appreciate being here. It's always a great privilege.
Well, I'll put those direct links down below. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Many thanks.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Roger Stone, the great Roger Stone, and a fantastic interview. We have some great news to get to today. President Trump making his return to Washington, D.C., meeting with President Joe Biden in the Oval Office. We have a few clips, one of Trump's plane taking off and another of Trump in the White House. Let's play those real quick, and then we will bring in our guest, the great Mark Vargas from the Illinois review. Let's roll that.
Mr. President-elect and former President, thank you. Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, there you have it, folks. President Trump returning to Washington, D.C. I'm now going to bring in my co-host today, the great Mark Vargas from the Illinois Review, the editor-in-chief. Mark, good to see you there, friend, in occupied territory in Illinois. What do you make of the news? President Trump returning to D.C. That looked like a cheery Joe Biden, didn't it, Mark?
I haven't seen Joe Biden that happy in a long time. Not since I think Jill got him his a new box of Ensure Nutrition shakes when they arrived at the White House. But yeah, the smile on his face, the way he was so welcoming, the photos afterwards with Jill Biden as well, just smiles all around. I love what's you're seeing on social media, people posing the question, is this proof, yet more proof that Joe and Jill Biden voted for Donald Trump? They've got a valid point given all the happiness during today's meeting at the White House.
Well, Mark, you got a great point there. And, we saw yesterday that there was a lunch between Biden and Harris, and there were some comments made, particularly in the press, about the awkwardness between Biden and Harris. This was brought up during the White House press briefing yesterday, and Karine Jean-Pierre, she actually snapped at Peter Doocy when he raised a question. So let's roll that clip real quick, and when we come back, let's get Mark's thoughts on this controversy, because we see the contrast. He's smiling there with Trump, and with Biden, or with Kamala Harris, not so much. Let's roll that.
We know that today, a week after the election, President Biden and Vice President Harris had a private lunch. How awkward was that?
I don't even understand. Why would it be awkward?
Because the president got squeezed out for her, and then she kept him at arm's length, and then she lost, and now she's back.
Why would you characterize it as awkward? They have regular lunches. They meet and talk regularly. Why would you call it awkward?
So there's no weirdness about the way that things have unfolded since
Did you see them?
21st.
Did you see them together yesterday as well, when they honored our veterans and were together during the day, making sure that we didn't forget the brave men and women that fought for this country? Did you see them together yesterday? Did you see the show of force together? This is. Look, I'm not even going to take the premise of the question. What I will say is the president and the vice president had lunch today. They've had lunch many times. They communicate with each other regularly. They had an opportunity to discuss the last 70 days or so of this administration, how important it is to get things done for the American people. And that's their focus. That is genuinely their focus. Yes, Patsy.
Thank you, Corinne. On his
Mark, your thoughts on Karine Jean-Pierre there? She seemed awful defensive about that, didn't she?
She did. And she's talking about the Veterans Day celebration, I believe, at Arlington National Cemetery. And I don't know if it was a show of force. Were the two of them showing up to an event at the same time to participate in a ceremony? The answer is yes. But was there smiles and love and friendship extended between the two? Absolutely not. In fact, the first lady sat next to the vice president and her husband, and you could see in the videos and in photos, it was a very cold reception. Jill Biden hardly looked to her right, and Harris spent most of the time smiling and talking to her husband. So even their show of force yesterday was very, very frosty. There's no question in my mind, there's no doubt in my mind that Joe Biden and Jill Biden did vote for Donald Trump. And it's more than just the smiles on their faces today and the cold shoulder they've extended towards Kamala Harris and her family. It's because he was hijacked. They yanked him out of the presidency and denied 14 million voters their choice to be the nominee for president. And what did she do? She paid entertainers, Oprah Winfrey, $1 million, and others $500,000 to make appearances and to endorse. And what did it get them? Horrific losses across the scale.
Well, Mark, that it's very true, and we're seeing a media that's really falling into hysteria. I mean, they really have been in hysteria since Trump was declared winner here, and I think I saw something yesterday that freaked him out more than just about anything, and that was Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, and they're really freaking out about this, calling this guy unqualified. Although I looked him up, Mark, he's a combat veteran, he has ample experience in military, and he's been very eloquent in what he thinks the military should become, what the U.S. military could be, and what they need to achieve in order to kind of weed out some of the corruption and the waste and fraud that we've seen plague our military for many years. And they're really freaking out of this, Mark. I want to ask you, why is this pick in particular getting under their skin? Is it because this guy's going to be taking on the military-industrial complex, or what do you think's afoot here?
Well, a couple of things. That's point number one, that he is going to be taking on the military-industrial complex. Point number two is he's been discussing, even promoting his book about how Pentagon leadership has failed, how we've fallen so far behind China, and that China currently is in possession of weapons that can completely annihilate our carriers out in the water, could end a conflict in, in Pete's, what he'd said is in 20 minutes, it would be over. And so he's been very critical of the Pentagon and their leadership. He's also anti-woke, and I think that's upsetting the Pentagon leadership. While they were celebrating, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Pentagon leaders were celebrating men transitioning to women and women transitioning to men and publishing DOD videos on this, celebrating it. You had our enemies and our adversaries planning an attack in Israel and in Ukraine. And so this is what happens when you take your eye off the ball. And Pete has said clearly from the very beginning that there's massive failures in the Pentagon, but they're afraid of him. And I just read a report earlier today that said Pentagon leadership and the commanders said this is a nightmare scenario to have Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. Well, listen, Troy, I worked at the Pentagon. I worked there for 3 years, traveled into Baghdad 14 times as a civilian, where I was TDY. I know the halls of the Pentagon very, very well. I practically lived in that five-sided squirrel cage for 3 years. I know what it's like, and I can assure you that these commanders that are saying this is a nightmare pick are exactly not the type of commanders we want leading us into war.
Well, and I think it represents, that Dick Cheney wing of government there in D.C., Mark, that has been in control for so long. They've had their way with basically everything. And the idea that they're going to be forced to change is very scary. And there's another breaking news topic, Mark, we have to get to today. We just have to talk about this because I've seen a lot of conservatives, I think, maybe mistakenly celebrating this news that Jack Smith, Special Counsel Jack Smith, is going to be resigning before Trump takes office. We have a couple headlines on this. Mark, the telling thing to me here is that he's going to be filing his quote-unquote report before Trump gets into office so that there can't be any review of what he's doing or his conduct. And I assume they'll have the opportunity to basically destroy any records that might incriminate people that have been conducting this illegal investigation from the beginning. So what are your thoughts here? This is really just trying to beat the clock so they don't get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, isn't it?
It really is unbelievable that they can make this unconstitutional appointment, number one. Secondly, to harass and antagonize and go after the 45th president with sham investigations, and then on a dime, just be able to like literally flip a switch and say, investigation's over, this office is closed up, our work is done. I mean, it's remarkable. And of course, none of this is accidental. They don't want to be investigated. They want to end this now so they can go to the paper shredder and get rid of everything. I mean, if they have burn bags, they want to throw everything that they can in these burn bags, hide the evidence. But I think that President Trump would be wise to open up an investigation. Let's look into this, the weaponization of special prosecutors like Jack Smith and so many others. And this is why, Troy, I think it's so important now that Republicans have control of both the House and the Senate, that we need to put legislation together, because our founding fathers never envisioned prosecutors having unbridled powers cloaked in immunity that would go after their political enemies. That was something that they never envisioned. They thought of everything else in terms of checks and balances, but they didn't. This didn't cross their radar. And so I think it's important now that we've got an overwhelming majority, that the American people have spoken, given the mandate, the popular vote, and the electoral vote that President Trump has received more than any Republican president in the history of our country. And I think what he ought to do is tell Congress, let's get some legislation together and let's prohibit for any president, whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president, let's keep these prosecutors, let's keep them in check, and let's pass legislation to do it.
Well, and Mark, what I'll add in there is when we look at the documents case in particular, the ruling from Eileen Cannon was that the appointment of Jack Smith was illegal in the first place. And I think that may have something to do with the fact that they're dropping this. They don't want that to advance because they know if that precedent gets set further down the road, like in say a Supreme Court rules in that favor, then the special counsel switch is dead. And this, I think, is an attempt by the deep state to preserve that special counsel precedent that we know, based on the judgment of Eileen Cannon, is completely illegal and unconstitutional. There's no provision in the Constitution that allows them to do this, Mark. And also, when our elected officials, Mark, they take an oath of office, and that means they're supposed to protect us as citizens. And one of the people that we've covered from the very beginning of Trump's win here, really defying their oath of office, is the Massachusetts governor. And in Massachusetts, the state police and the governor have both come out and said, we're not going to help Donald Trump deport anybody. We're not going to do anything to stop illegal immigration. We have a few headlines on that. And at the same time, Mark, keep in mind, ICE just grabbed an illegal immigrant in Massachusetts and charged him with child sex crimes as this governor is kicking and screaming and saying, we're not going to deport anybody. We're not doing anything about this. We had protesters gather just yesterday at the State House in support of Trump and his deportation plan, really in defiance of this governor who has declared she's not going to enforce the law. We want to roll the clip of those protesters. When we come back, get your thoughts on this blatant, basically refusal or basically willingness to put her people in complete and total danger here. Mark, let's roll that. Okay, we don't have that clip. They just told me that. But Mark, what is your thoughts on this governor that basically refuses to enforce the law? I mean, this is putting our people in danger, no?
Well, 100%. And this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. As you know, I'm here in Chicago, a sanctuary city where nearly 40,000 illegals have taken over Chicago. And so for the Massachusetts governor to talk about this is really a dereliction of duty, because the first duty of public office is to protect the people. And how can you protect the people when it's proven, the statistics and facts are there, that these migrants, illegals, have created havoc in our cities? Crime has skyrocketed. It's interesting, Troy, that they like to talk about women's rights to choose, right? But what about just women's rights of protecting women? That never plays into this factor. You think about the 300,000 children that are missing along the southern border. Where'd they go? Human trafficking. That's exactly where they went. It's outrageous that this governor is not wanting to cooperate. But what's happening is that she's going to learn soon, because again, this is why President Trump had this mandate. One of his number one issues was illegal migration, closing our border and deporting the illegals, sending them back to their country of origin. And he not only won the electoral vote, he won the popular vote too, by a lot. And so the message has been sent. And if this governor doesn't catch up, she's going to be found gas sheet of history on this one.
I think you're exactly right, Mark. I mean, this was a popular vote mandate, not just from the red states or from like Texas or something like that. This was a mandate from the entire country. They want to see Donald Trump's policies brought to fruition, and they, more importantly, they want to be protected. You know, the Biden administration has turned a blind eye. I mean, what, 25 million illegal immigrants have come into the country since Biden took office? I mean, that is just unacceptable. And I think people are getting wrapped up in the Tom Homan rhetoric, or they're saying, oh, this is too harsh, or who are they going after? The basic fact is this, folks. The people came in illegally. They have to go. It doesn't matter what kind of process you use. And as Tom Homan says, you know, you want to keep the families together? Deport them together. I think that's brilliant. It might ruffle some feathers and people might not like it, but they came into the country illegally, and we have to protect our own people and put them first. You know, there's a whole group of Democrats, Mark, and I wanted to get this to, because one of your greatest hits is in here. We have Democrats angling right now for 2028, because as soon as Kamala Harris lost, the seat for 2028 to become the next Democrat presidential candidate kind of opened up. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but it's important to lay the tracks and the foundation for what we're going to see going forward. And what we've seen is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is planting stories everywhere about himself, about how he's next on deck, and how there was even a story in the New York Post where it basically said Kamala Harris lost because she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, which is just unbelievable. And there was another article in The Hill that I read that was an obviously planted story that was like, Josh Shapiro, he has the best chance of defeating the Republican in 2028. His prospects are rising. We've seen reports that he is really planning to enter this race. And we also saw reports that California Governor Gavin Newsom, after calling a special session to the California legislature as soon as Trump was elected to address Trump's assault on California, he's now headed to D.C. this week in order to lobby for California's wish list and basically to lay out his anti-Trump agenda. He's in D.C. He's spending the week there. He's obviously laying the groundwork for 2028. So I want to ask you, Mark, what do you think's going on here? Which one of these two gentlemen do you think would have the edge in a potential battle for the 2028 Democrat presidential nomination?
Well, President Trump's already on fire, and he hasn't even taken office yet. And then if that's the case, Democrats won't be in control for a long time, because what this election proved is how far out of touch these Democrats have become, like Shapiro and Newsom and Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, my home state, who also wants to be president. But when was the last time that we've elected a man who is 450 pounds to the presidency or the vice presidency? Hasn't happened. But, you know, this is all just a shell game. Everyone's trying to position themselves. But at the end of the day, the American people have spoken. And to Trump-proof your state is absolutely laughable, considering that Trump's policies are pretty basic. Policies that even Democrats in California can agree with. Safer communities, closed border, put violent people where they belong, in jail. Let's clean up our cities. I mean, have you been to San Francisco? I mean, there's human feces all over the streets. It's literally disgusting. I know people that have traveled there for business and have said, I don't even leave my hotel room. The city of San Francisco is such a total disaster. Violent and dangerous criminals that have crossed our southern border, let's send them back to our home country. This isn't necessarily a Republican idea. This is American ideas. These are Trump's policies. And for Gavin Newsom to think that this is just sort of a MAGA agenda is outrageous, and he's going to learn quick that he's no longer in the majority. He's now in the super minority.
Well, you know, and Gavin Newsom, really just an unlikable guy. I mean, as Roger said, he may have perfect hair, but he is not a good presenter on television. And, you know, Ron DeSantis is a guy that, you know, it's the more people saw of Ron DeSantis, the less they really liked of him. He is not a star politician in the way that President Donald Trump is. And yet in the debate between Newsom and DeSantis came off like he was the best politician you've ever seen. And Newsom really was made to look ridiculous. And, you know, Mark, with that record in California, I just don't see how he has any political future because people are fleeing the state. No matter what he tries to spin about it, they ran out of U-Hauls because so many people were trying to leave the damn place because it's turned into a hellhole. Like you said, nobody wants to live there. And as you did mention, I didn't know J.B. Pritzker was 450 pounds. That's a lot of weight on that guy. But we have several other people that are in contention for this 2028 run that are also considering. Just want to run them real quick. Pete Buttigieg also considering a run, and this is my personal pick. I'm praying just for my job. I'll make a lot of money if he gets the nomination. Tim Walz, our favorite hands man, yes, he's going to be, apparently he's seeking the 2028 nomination. I can't wait for that, Mark, because he's comic gold. I've never seen a guy that is more out of touch, and I just want to say real quickly, I saw him speak once, just a couple weeks ago, and he actually criticized Elon Musk for jumping around on stage, and I think he called him a fairy or something like that. Have you ever seen somebody more disconnected from reality than Tim Walz?
Jazz hands. I mean, it really was frightening. Every time he took the stage, you just didn't sure whether he was going to, throw up his jazz hands or kick up his one leg. But what's even more frightening than Tim Walz's candidacy is his wife, Gwen. I mean, the way she talks down to people, like she's the teacher and we're the young, dumb students. Repeat after me, turn the page, right? And she really has that crazy look in her eyes. And so even scarier than a thought of Tim Walz running for president is his wife being a first lady. Again, I'm happier to see that she's gone rather than Tim.
Yeah, she makes Jill Biden look like Marilyn Monroe. We'll say that much. And real quick, we have a headline. Just so Tim Walz, for the record, he lost his home county to Trump, which I just think is hilarious because this is a guy. Every time he comes out, Mark, he plays that stupid song, I Was Born in a Small Town. And it's just like, yeah, dude, you were in China, like 40 times? You lied about being in Tiananmen Square? Give me a break. And he lost his home county. So how's that for your small town? Well, Mark, unfortunately, we're out of time today. I had a great time. I always have a good time with you here in the Stone Zone. But we will hopefully see you next time. And I thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Troy.
I will see you soon. All right, so folks, I want you to go to mypillow.com because when you go to mypillow.com, you're going to get great American-made products like the best bath towels you could imagine, the best Giza Dream Sheets you could imagine. These sheets, folks, you put these sheets on a $35 mattress, all of a sudden you're living like a king, and people will say, your wife will say, oh my God, did you buy a new mattress? No, it's just the sheets. These are high-quality sheets right from the mind of Mike Lindell, genius guy. And you also have the pillows. I mean, look at the pillows. If you ever slept on a MyPillow, folks, you'll never go back. I mean, you don't have to flip the thing over. It's always cool. And the technology they use is just unbelievable. So use promo code STONE at checkout. Get yourself great products, and that will actually help us keep the lights on here at the Stone Zone. A small contribution will be made to the show to help Roger and Nydia defend themselves from the many crazy people who try to sue them constantly just because he's effective. So anyway, folks, mypillow.com, and make sure you use promo code STONE at checkout. There'll be a little box. You can just type in STONE. Anyway, folks, rumble.com/Roger Stone is where you can find the show every night at 8 p.m. You can also check Roger out on Twitter and encourage you to check out StoneZONE.com. But again, they're rumble.com/Roger Stone. Download the Rumble app. And we will see you tomorrow. I think Roger will be back tomorrow, and we'll be back in the saddle. Hope you have a beautiful evening, and God bless.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?